Good morning. I'd like to call the public session of the BIFAC meeting to order. My name is Nick McCrae, Chair of TCHC Board's Building Investment, Finance, and Audit Committee. Welcome to the public session of today's committee meeting. Let me begin with an acknowledgement that the land each of us is on as we hold this virtual meeting is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 of the Mississaugas of the Credit. During today's public session, 8 reports are brought forward to the committee's approval, 6 are brought forward to the committee's information. I don't believe we have any deputations for today. So with that, I'll ask for any declarations of conflict of interest with any of the materials in today's meeting agenda. Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the public agenda. Can I ask for items to be held for discussion by committee members? Go ahead, John.
I'd like to hold item 6B and 6C.
Any other items to hold? I'll hold item 7 and 9A, 12A and 12B, please.
Nick, sorry, did you hold 9?
Nope, but we can.
Thank you.
So I've got 6B and C, item 7, item 9, 12A and B. Any other items to hold? Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, the consent agenda? Thank you. Seconder, thank you. All in favor? Carried. So with that, we'll go right to 6B, vendor award, comprehensive envelope, mechanical and electrical retrofit at 840 Eglinton West. John, over to you.
Right. Thank you. So just to understand it correctly, the award is for $7.6 million, but we are receiving a $3.1 million. Oh no. We're receiving $1.8 million in funding from Natural Resources Canada.
Through the chair, that's correct.
And that is, so that's offsetting the 7.8 or 7.6 million.
Correct.
All right, thank you. And for this building, the work that's being done, do we have, this is mechanical and electrical retrofit. What exactly does that all involve?
Through the chair. So with this, we are looking at an extensive retrofit of the building. So envelope would be with cladding, windows.
Oh, everything. Oh,
correct.
Okay. And so the whole building. And so what kind of savings will be realized? And I've asked this question in previous awards. What kind of savings will, this is only a 40-unit building where we're spending, I guess, $5.8 million after the government's money comes in. What kind of savings will be realized from this retrofit?
That I don't have the exact number. I can certainly provide that to you through an email. It is not necessarily like the entire project, though, is not being driven necessarily by the savings. It is also a building that is in need of being brought back up to a good state of good repair, just due to the age of the building, Obviously, the windows only last for so long, and cladding is necessary and things like that to improve the building and ensure that it'll remain as part of our stock in a satisfactory manner.
Do we do an energy audit on these buildings?
We do, through the chair, yes, we do take a look depending on the project. Now, with this one specifically, because there is a grant attached to it, then I'm assuming that it would have been done as well, or we wouldn't have qualified for the grant.
Okay, so just going forward, when we do these kinds of projects that are supposed to result in energy savings, it would be good to have that kind of information included in the report. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chair.
Can I have a motion to approve? Thank you, John. Seconder. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Carried. We'll move to item 6C. Back to you, John.
Right, and on this item, I'd like to know in regard to Greater Toronto Fire Protection, which withdrew their bid, was there a formal meeting with that company? Was there a formal meeting when they pulled out there and said they didn't want to do business with us anymore? Was there a formal meeting?
Through the chair, I'm just going to ask Amanda to respond to the question. Yeah, go ahead, Amanda.
Yes, so through the chair, the contract negotiations fell apart. So therefore, we were discussing the contract terms with the vendor. During those contract negotiations, it was found out there was some misunderstanding based on the price. And we were, at that time, within a meeting with GTFP. After that, GTFP did withdraw their bid in writing. There was not a follow-up meeting after that.
So there was a misunderstanding in terms of their interpretation of the RFP or?
Correct. Correct,
Okay.
and the way that they submitted their pricing.
And the way that they submitted their pricing. So it became uneconomical for them, presumably, to carry on.
Correct.
Okay. And do you have a clear understanding as to why it became uneconomical for the company?
Through the chair, the understanding that GTFP had on the pricing for the demand rates was that a quote was going to be submitted each time a demand project was requested. And that quote would encompass hours for travel, such as travel time, as well as any administrative costs. Within the RFP, we indicated that the vendors would only be paid for time on site. So therefore, they needed to build a demand price that would encompass all overhead, travel time, et cetera. And our understanding is that was not done by GTFP.
And yet they have won awards from us in the past, correct?
Correct.
Right.
They have. Correct.
Okay. How many, so we're in this peculiar situation where now we have a very, very, very short roster of companies that can bid on this fairly lucrative business. And that's not the case at the City of Toronto, which also operates, shelters and buildings in which people live. So what is it that the City of Toronto is doing differently than what we're doing to attract more bidders?
Alan, I'm going to turn this over to you because the information we have is based on the scope of work for this project and the code requirements.
Thank you. Through the chair, we do have our scope of work. I honestly don't know what the difference is. We have taken a look as part of our review of this and have looked at our scope of services to see if there is something that potentially is different. We do have a high level for our scope of services. Just because of the nature of our business, and we do go for more stringent fire life safety, I would say, than perhaps what a private landlord might do. And there is a difference too in terms of with the City of Toronto, like a care facility will have a different requirement than what we would have. They also do have on-site operators, you know, they're 24/7, which is not something that we have at our buildings. I don't know that that makes a difference. We do definitely do outreach, I know through procurement, to attract as many vendors as we can. What we have found is that it is generally there are not necessarily a lot of vendors that find our portfolio attractive. And that's not just specifically to fire life safety. There is for a number of items with vendors that they don't find our portfolio, the nature of our portfolio to be necessarily as attractive as you know, like a private facility or one that has operators there 24/7.
And if I could just interject, I'm not sure it's a totally fair comparison. I'm not sure we're privy to the City of Toronto's procurement results and number of vendors and so on. So that being said, expanding the roster of vendors is an important priority for the organization and something I know finance and procurement is very involved with. So something we'd like to see improved strategically over the next, you know, period of time. Though I'm not sure comparing it to City of Toronto is appropriate, given at least I don't know the results of their procurement processes or how deep their vendor bid is or what have you.
So I would like to make a motion that, and I'm happy to move approval of this, but Dara, I would like to make a motion that that staff consult with the City of Toronto's fire prevention group, as well as that of the long-term care group, and make comparisons as to how they recruit fire prevention companies. You know,
The point being, in this specific area, we want to have a deeper roster of vendors, and let's leverage the city's.
I mean, are we? I want to get to. Are we being too stringent and strict? Because certainly, I don't imagine we're that much different than the long-term care facilities. The City of Toronto operates a number of shelters. They all have, you know, fire risk and have to be regularly maintained and made to be safe places. And so I would like to see our staff work with their staff to find out where the differences lie and how, you know, perhaps we can modify some of our criteria to encourage more companies to come forward so it's a more robust bidding process.
Yeah. Need a motion, or do we need is this a business arising, or
Sorry, we can.
is this like? Yeah. We'll note it as an action item from this report. Go ahead, Tom.
As to the chair, to the director, I might just also add to the motion that we would look at comparable not-for-profit housing providers or local housing corporations, right? So what is Ottawa Community Housing doing? What is Windsor Community? And I know we are doing currently some work around this, so I just think it would just bringing that information forward will also be helpful, because I think that is a good comparator.
I'm just cognizant of making the list of to-dos so long that it takes so long to get done. So
Pick the most relevant ones and report back.
yeah, I just think like there's something that's not right when we're now down to 2 companies, right? So that's Dara, what's the difference between a motion to do that and as an undertaking in the action items?
So I can reflect it in the actual motion itself. Truly, there is no difference. As you know, we report back to the committee on action items. This will form part of the action item list that we will identify for future BIFAC meetings in the agenda. So you'll see it at future meetings.
Sorry to interject. Would there be a timeline attached to when that would come back?
Yes.
There will be. Could I suggest that as part of the action item, that you direct staff to report back on that timeline, rather than set one at the next meeting?
I think simply like in the action item for the next BIFAC, it'll have that action item with a date associated. All the action items have dates associated with them. So as part of that action item, there'll be a date, and committee members can review it at that time, whether it's an appropriate date or not.
Yep.
If I may add, through the chair, we start establishing a relationship with the City of Toronto's Procurement Division, PMMD. We're in regular monthly meetings with the CPO, Genevieve, and also their procurement director, Sandra Lisi, and her group, to really learn from their practices and then really leverage either vendor records or their existing vendor pools as we're undergoing our procurement process. It's work in progress.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Question?
Yep, please.
Do we have social procurement policy in TCHC?
But through the chair, it's being developed. We do have a social procurement program. Specifically, the policies piece is being worked on through an external counsel. We do plan to bring that back to the committee in the May or June timeframe. Working in collaboration with operations team, we also have a CABR team, and our revitalization portfolio also has a CED program, definitely has a social program, social procurement program and policy piece to it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? With that, I'll ask for a motion to approve. Thank you, seconder, thank you. All in favor? Thank you.
Just before,
Yep.
can I comment on 60E and F and the disparity between the two numbers? So for committee members, I just wanted to flag that in 3 of the reports, we identified a transcription error. In the reports on items 6D, E, and F, committee members will note that the purpose describes the upset limit for the contract value differently than what is actually described in the recommendation in the report. And in each case, the dollar value that's identified in the report purpose is the correct number. So the motion that we will reflect that the committee has adopted in relation to those items is corrected to reflect the amount in the purpose section. Just wanted to flag that.
That was a test, by the way. Nobody caught it. Just kidding. That was 6C, I believe. And so now we're on to 7, item 7, change order demand general repairs program. If I could ask staff to speak to it, and I'll just first make a remark. First, from a committee governance perspective, we are hyper conscious about approving items after they've already occurred, understanding that this only came to light afterwards. However, I do want to highlight this is an area of focus for this committee. I'm curious as well about the timing of that as it relates to, I believe, the period ended in August 2023 and we're in March today. And then thirdly, on a go-forward basis, comfort that we're working to remedy that. So if you don't mind touching on those 3 points in your remarks on this item, please.
So through the chair, I'll start off with some opening remarks, and then I will turn it to my Senior Director of Operations, John Ankow, to speak in more specifics. So today we are seeking the retroactive approval of a change order of $1.45 million for the Demand General Program. The approval of the requested change order is to address the actual spend with the approved contract budget for the 2022 to 2023 contract year. The unplanned increase in work orders for the DGR program was informed by a variety of factors outlined in the report, and increased focus has been put on implementing local and enterprise-wide solutions to ensure that this situation doesn't reoccur. I'm happy to turn it over to John Ankow, who will speak to the specifics of your questions.
And through the chair, the issue that was identified that gave rise to this change order occurred when we were conducting the end-of-year reconciliation of the financial figures. It is from our piece, represent an oversight, but also a timing issue. Recognizing there was certainly opportunities to improve. I think moving forward, what we're doing locally is to improve the cadence of these reviews. Typically, we would do these reviews retrospectively quarterly. I've instructed the team to review these figures on a weekly basis and report out to the operations division on a bi-weekly basis. But but also realizing that such an approach needs a sort of holistic enterprise-wide approach. We're also going to work with our partners in finance and IT to look at the enterprise-wide solutions, both that exist in homes and through the bonfire solutions that would allow us to better track the the award expenditures, budgets, and also the timing of these award timelines moving forward.
And I think a key factor in this was like a multi-vendor, multi-year award. Do we feel like the system now is in place where we can catch these situations going forward? I understand, like, we sort of find out as we go along a little bit, but this is an important one. And, you know, given the complexity of building repairs and so on and I'm expecting more of these to come. So is it fair, do we feel like we now have a process to catch these going forward?
Yes, through the chair, we are in the process of establishing the system control framework. And some work already started. For example, the multi-year PO in the system to really track and set the upper limit of the vendor committed contractual obligations during the multi-year project cycle. And on top of that, we will also be working with GRD and IT and also operations team to review the business processes, especially the business approvals, to tie the work order initiated from the front line to the PO as well as to the budget, both at the line item level as well as the project and program level as well.
And I think I saw that, is homes part of that process going forward?
Absolutely. Not just the canned report, is also some customization of the programming and also configuration to fit into the our TCHC's either delegate signing authority or the approval level by various approvers throughout the organization.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Sorry, I'm not quite clear. So we write thousands of checks throughout the year, thousands of checks. So how do we keep track if they're all in line with what the budget is?
Through the chair, thanks, Director Campbell, for that question. Our current tracking mechanism is it's essentially that procurement to pay process, but part of it, it's manual, part of it's system. For example, if it's a break and fix repairs at one of our buildings, the vendors was called in to do the work, and it's been approved and work is completed to the satisfactory. But the missing link right now is we only do 1 year PO in the system. So for the multi-year, there's a gap. We already identified, we already worked on it.
I see.
So with that, the approval is in place and the invoices come in, being approved and then paid. But it's just that multi-year over the entire project cycle, it's a system deficiency and process deficiency as well.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, for context, our fiscal budget is managed with our quarterly reports, and so we have a really clear line of sight in terms of our budget. I think the challenge that we're trying to address through the home solution and the reporting is related to the approved awarded amount. And they're typically not aligned with the fiscal year. So you can appreciate they straddle years. And so even though respective teams may be managing their budgeted amount, they're not necessarily looking at the overall awarded contracted amount, if that makes sense.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve? Thank you, John. Seconder, thank you. All in favor? Carried. We'll move to item 9, delegated real estate property transactions in Q4. I think that's over to you, or do we have specific questions on the materials?
Councillor.
Over to you, Councillor.
Is staff speaking to it, or? I recognize that it's pretty straightforward. Go ahead.
Just generally what I can offer is that the board has determined that certain real estate transactions that are at a level of that's appropriate can be managed by TCHC management without specific authority from the board in relation to each transaction. So this report complies with the board's direction that we report back on a regular basis when we are entering into the types of transactions, so that the board has oversight of the work that's being done in these areas. So this report provides an update on those delegated real estate transactions that management has engaged in during the fourth quarter of 2023. In each case, the transaction is described in the report as a permission to enter. And that generally is a type of agreement we enter into with a third party who, for some reason, presumably work that they are undertaking in relation to a neighboring property, is seeking access to our property in order to facilitate that work. So we enter into an agreement that governs matters like the terms that would govern their access to the property, their obligation to indemnify us from any claims arising out of the work that they might perform. And in that context, we allow them to enter into the property, do whatever work that they need to have done, and they go about their business. It's typically not a significant transaction from a financial perspective. It's part of our owning property in the city of Toronto that throughout the city, adjoining properties by other parties who may need to do work on their land.
Mm-hmm. What would be an example of, let's say 12 Thorncliffe Park, what would, if that technical detail is readily available, what would be an example of a permission to enter?
So I don't know, Alan, I think that was a transaction that you signed on behalf of TC. I'm not sure if the details of that transaction come to mind at the moment, but typically I'm looking at the transactions. Typically, they relate to work like somebody is going to undertake a development and may need to tie back into our foundation in order to support the construction that they're going to undertake on their land. It may be that they're going to undertake work on a retaining wall that borders our property, and in order to undertake that work, they need to come onto our property. It may mean that they're doing work to their building envelope and need to, for a temporary period, construct scaffolding on our property in order to facilitate that work. The Metrolinx work typically is related to work like investigation work related to a potential expropriation or construction on their property that abuts ours. That's generally the kind of agreements that we're talking about here.
Thank you. That's helpful. And lastly, and just out of curiosity, not to imply that I think this should be done, but are local councillors notified of these permission to enters?
We can look into that. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, but certainly we can look into that and perhaps adopt that as a practice. I'm happy to consult with you offline on that.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was it.
Could I have a motion to approve, please? Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Carried. We'll move on to item 12. This is the Internal Audit Department's annual report. I'd like to ask Kareem to present the annual report, and I'd like to emphasize to the committee the importance of internal audit, which from a governance perspective reports directly to this committee and is really sort of, in some respects, eyes and ears on a lot of matters within the corporation. And so this is very important work that helps supports this committee's oversight and governance of the organization. So first off, I'd like to say thank you for all the hard work this year. And then with that, if you don't mind walking us through your annual report to remind everyone of the 2023 activities.
Sure. Thank you for the remarks, and thank you for all your continued support for you and your committee. I'd like to start with the governance structure of the department, which is on page 79 of your package. We have functional reporting to BIFAC and administrative reporting to the CFO. There are two distinct functions within internal audit: the corporate internal audit team and RGI internal audit team. Moving to the next page, highlights for 2023. On the corporate side, we provided 5 reports during the year, which contain total of 65 recommendations. On the RGI sides, we have executed compliance audits for the, to making sure that the Housing Services Act and the City of Toronto RGI manual is complied with by the staff. On top of that, we supported the management for the arrears management project as well. Some details are provided there. We covered more than 5,000 accounts during 22 and 2023 under this project. 48 reports were provided. And as a result, about 7.1 million reduction in arrears were seen. Moving to the next page, in addition to the corporate audit projects and RGI projects, internal audit is also tasked with monitoring and periodically reporting to ELT the reports and the open recommendations which have been provided by the external audit accountability bodies such as AG, Ombudsman, etc. And that has happened in the year 2023 as well. In addition, just to highlight that our staff has moved forward with their professional aspirations as well, and they've completed their CPE hours which are required to renew their various professional certifications. For 2024, outlook for 2024, which is on page 84 of the package. So we will, similar to 2023, we will complete the BIFAC approved plan. BIFAC approved the 2024 plan in the last meeting. That will be completed on the corporate side. In addition to that, on the RGI side, we will continue to do the compliance audits, and we will continue to also support the management for the arrears management project by initiating new phases. In addition, we will continue to monitor and coordinate with the management and periodically report to ELT the status of the open recommendations from the external accountability bodies, namely AG and Ombudsman, etc. And in addition, when requested, we will be supporting the management with what we call special assignments or special projects. And staff will also be provided cross-functional opportunities between the two teams, and they will continue to work towards their professional certifications. And excuse me. And they will also continue with their professional education hours to renew their certifications. After that, Appendix 1 onwards, there are some details provided for the projects done during the year on the corporate side as well as on the RGI sides. There are high-level conclusions provided. And at the very end, there is a summary of 2 requests from the management which we carried out in terms of on the analysis that were completed. That's the end, I guess. If there are any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Go ahead, Bharti.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Can you briefly walk me through how an RGI account is reviewed?
Sorry, RGI?
Like, you mentioned there were 5,000 odd accounts reviewed, 48 reports were created, 7 million was reduced. So how do you review or audit if a person is not suited for the RGI? Okay. Or there's some misalignment?
So the stats that you just mentioned, that was not related to the compliance audit, which is our core mandate, that related to the arrears management project on which we are supporting the management. But I can brief you on that as well as the compliance side. So on this one, what we do is during various different phases of this arrears management project, which is going on for about 2 years now, we identify the needs where we can help the management by identifying where there are more chances of non-compliance with the arrears the process. And based on that, we select the files, we review the files, and then we see if it's in compliance. Where there are any gaps, we identify those gaps by providing these periodic reports that we have mentioned.
Oh, no, I understand that, sorry. What I was thinking operationally, how do you find if somebody is on an RGI that they shouldn't be on? Like, how do you pursue that?
So operationally, it is not our core mandate to identify, so there could be various different reasons, right? So if, for example, if there is non-compliance, if there is a suspected fraud, or if there is any other reason for which somebody who's on RGI should not be, we do not focus. That's basically operations job. We do not focus on identifying those activities, but that would be a byproduct of our work. So when we review tenant files, and if we feel that there are matters which needs to be further investigated, we do. And if we conclude that...
Yeah, so sorry, that's what I'm getting at, is how do you verify? How do you ascertain whether...
So based on the review of tenant files, and based on the review of tenant ledgers and doing the calculations, and when we review the document...
what I'm getting is maybe really in the weeds, is like, what's an example of when you recognize there may be fraud or whatever you want?
So example would be, for example, when we review the file, we see the notice of assessment, and if we feel that notice of assessment, for example, is fabricated, right? Or we feel that, for example, if there is a household wherein there is one adult, but we see there are 2 parking spots or 3 parking spots. So if there is one adult who's supposed to drive, and if there are 3 parking spots, that will be a red flag for us as to why there are 3 parking spots. There could be a subletting, for example, or there could be an illegal occupant example. So these are some of the things that, when we come across, we dig deep into it, and then accordingly we highlight either to operations, and in some cases we also refer it to our investigations team.
So through the chair, if I could build on that. So the internal audit team doesn't actually manage that process. They spot check the process. The process is managed by the operations team through our tenant service coordinators. We have approximately 150 across the city. They work with their tenants within their geographic region. They do something called an annual review, an AR, where they're actually work with the tenant to verify the number of tenants, verify the sources of income, and then calculate the rent. So based on that calculation, and to Karim's point, other evidence of us potentially identifying a tenant who shouldn't be living in the unit or should be on the lease. That's how we actually work with the fraud department, which reports up through the legal team to actually establish whether we need to pursue it or not. But that is done through the annual review process.
Excellent, thank you. That clears it up. Thank you, both of you. And last question, coming back to the governance structure, just out of curiosity, historically, when was this internal audit introduced? Was it always there in this form, or was there any reform over the last?
So it is, by and large, it is in this form since last 5 years. I joined about 5 years ago. Previously, internal audit has evolved. It was reporting under different divisions. Once upon a time, it was probably part of legal and then asset management also. Currently, this is the structure, and this is there for about 5 years at least.
Okay, and is it staff's opinion, through you, Mr. Chair, that this is the optimal structure for transparency and accountability?
It's a bit of a loaded question. Because internal audit is, reviewing staff. So.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, basically, internal audit is the check and balance on the organization.
Sorry, I thought you meant they're actually reviewing.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well,
not beyond their existing function.
Yeah, not beyond their existing function, but various parts of the business sporadically. So, to a certain degree, it's a bit loaded in the sense of if you think internal audit is doing a good job or a bad job because they're reviewing the different divisions and functional areas of the organization. So it's important that the governance and reporting and oversight is really held at the committee level. So the really question I think is actually to ourselves.
Right.
Do we think they're adding value and providing thorough, robust reports? And great example with the arrears. That's a function by operations. Like they're the ones doing it. They're the ones that have all the checks and balances and sort of the red flags. And it's really internal audit saying, is that system robust? Is that system, done with integrity, et cetera, but not actually doing it? That's an operational role. So, I would sort of turn the question back on ourselves. Do we think internal audit is adding value, or the reports, the areas they're focusing on, which we approve as part of the work plan, and the results of those reports are meaningful. And then I'll also emphasize there are management action items coming out of those recommendations that have dates attached that, and I think we're going to discuss this a bit more in the in-camera session, like the result, like, are they getting done? And are the recommendations being implemented? And if not, why not, sort of thing. But it plays an important role, obviously. It's sort of our, just a certain degree, our eyes and ears within the organization beyond just the executive reporting from senior management, if I can put it that way.
Fair enough, fair enough. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah. Any other,
That's it for me, yeah.
any other questions? Okay, I think we're receiving this for information. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to receive. Thank you. Seconder, thank you, John. All in favor? Carried. And I believe I actually had the last item B, but I was thinking of the in-camera session, so we can scratch that from the hold items, or I guess we have to approve it because it didn't get approved in the consent. Yeah. So a motion to approve 12B, unless anyone has any questions. No. John, thank you. Seconder, Parthy. All in favor? Carried. And with that, I believe that's the last item of the public session. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, John. Seconder, Parthy, thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everybody. And thank you all who watched on the live stream today's session.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, the other business? Yeah, other business. Do we have to reopen or just? Yes. As long as you didn't minute the adjourning, we're just a motion to reopen. Motion to reopen. Thank you, John. Seconder. Thank you, Parthy. All in favor? Carried. Over you, Dara, for one other item of business.
So in the in-camera session, there was a discussion that has resulted in a request for a public motion to approve an award of work through a non-competitive process. So if I can pull up, sorry. So just the motion is a motion to approve the award of a non-competitive award to KPMG in an amount not to exceed roughly $2.5 million to support work being undertaken by our Information Technology Services Division.
Can I ask for a mover of the motion? I guess any discussion? Can I ask someone to move the motion? Well, I think we're gonna need a mover and a seconder, right?
We'd need a move. Well, our board rules actually provide that we don't necessarily need a seconder, but we do need somebody to move it.
Can the chair move it?
Sure. Yes. Chair can move it.
I'll move it. All in favor? All in favor? Do we have the other counselor on the line?
If it's, to be clear, if a majority of the committee members don't approve the motion, it fails even if it's a tie.
Okay.
So I believe Councillor Perruzza is still in the meeting virtually.
Well, either way, we need either the yay or nay. All in favor? Myself? All opposed? Noted. Carried. Now I'll ask for a second motion to adjourn. All in favor? Thank you. Carried.